I was standing at the railing of the Starlight Princess, watching the gray waters of the Inside Passage churn beneath us as we sailed toward Alaska, when Dr. Patricia Chen appeared at my elbow. The ship's physician was supposed to be off duty, but her face was pale, her eyes darting toward the promenade deck where my daughter Sarah and her husband Marcus were laughing over cocktails. She leaned in close, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Mr. Thornton, don't take your insulin tonight. Please, I'm begging you." Then she pressed something into my palm and walked away quickly, her white coat flapping behind her. I stood there frozen, my heart hammering against my ribs. The small object in my hand was a business card with a room number scribbled on the back. My fingers trembled as I closed them around it. Why would the ship's doctor tell me not to take my medication? I'd been diabetic for 15 years. Missing my insulin could put me in a coma. My mind raced through possibilities, none of them making sense. Behind me, I heard Sarah's bright laugh carry across the deck, the same laugh she'd had since she was 6 years old, chasing butterflies in our backyard in Vancouver. That morning had started so differently. I'd woken up in my cabin feeling grateful. This cruise was Sarah's idea, a celebration of my retirement after 40 years as a civil engineer. "Dad, you've worked so hard your whole life," she'd said 3 months ago, sitting in my kitchen in North Vancouver, her hand on mine. "Let us treat you. Marcus got a huge bonus, and we want to do something special for you." Marcus had nodded enthusiastically, his perfectly styled hair and expensive watch catching the light. "Think of it as a thank you, Robert. You helped us with the down payment on our house. This is our way of giving back." I'd been touched. Sarah was my only child. Her mother, Catherine, had died of cancer 8 years ago, and sometimes the loneliness of my empty house felt like it might swallow me whole. Having Sarah and Marcus plan this trip, insisting on covering everything, had made me feel valued, loved. We'd boarded the ship in Vancouver 2 days ago, and so far, the trip had been wonderful. The glaciers, the wildlife, the elegant dinners in the main dining room. But now, standing on this deck with Dr. Chen's warning echoing in my ears, something cold settled in my stomach. I looked down at the card again. Room C, 247. My cabin was B, 189, 2 decks up. I glanced over at Sarah and Marcus again. They were sitting close together, their heads bent over Marcus's phone, pointing at something on the screen. From this distance, they looked like the perfect young couple, successful, beautiful, happy. I turned and walked toward the elevator, my legs feeling unsteady. The ship rocked gently beneath me, or maybe that was just my balance faltering. I'd been feeling off for the past 2 days, actually, more tired than usual, slightly dizzy. I'd attributed it to the motion of the ship, to adjusting to sea air after months of being landlocked. Now I wondered. Dr. Chen answered her door on the first knock, as if she'd been waiting. She pulled me inside quickly, glancing down the corridor before closing the door. Her cabin was small but efficiently organized, medical texts on the built-in shelf, a laptop open on the narrow desk. She gestured for me to sit on the edge of her bed, the only seating besides the desk chair. "I'm sorry for being so dramatic," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "But I didn't know what else to do. I almost convinced myself I was wrong, that I should stay out of it, but I can't. I took an oath to do no harm, and if I stay silent, I'd be doing exactly that." "What are you talking about?" My voice came out rougher than I intended. She pulled out her phone, tapped a few times, then turned it toward me. It was security footage, grainy and slightly angled, showing the ship's pharmacy. The timestamp read yesterday, 3:47 p.m. I watched as a figure in a dark jacket approached the counter. The pharmacist was turned away, reaching for something on a high shelf. The figure's hand darted out, grabbing something from behind the counter, slipping it into their jacket pocket. The movement was quick, practiced. Then the figure turned slightly toward the camera. It was Marcus. My breath caught in my throat. What did he take? Insulin, a vial of Humalog. Dr. Chen's eyes were filled with concern. I only noticed because I do inventory checks twice a week. One vial was missing, and when I reviewed the security footage, I saw this. At first, I thought maybe he was diabetic too, embarrassed to ask for a prescription. But then I checked the passenger manifest. Marcus Harrison, age 38. No medical conditions listed. No prescriptions on file. Maybe he forgot to list it, I said, even as my mind was already racing ahead to darker possibilities. That's what I hoped. So I looked up your file, Mr. Thornton. You're on a very specific insulin regimen. Lantus at night. Humalog with meals. Your dosages are carefully calibrated. I reviewed your blood work from your pre-cruise medical check. Your diabetes is well controlled. But then I started thinking about why your son-in-law would steal insulin if he's not diabetic. And there's really only one reason someone would do that. The cabin suddenly felt too small, too hot. To harm someone who is diabetic. She nodded slowly. An insulin overdose causes hypoglycemia, confusion, dizziness, loss of consciousness. If severe enough, seizures, coma, death. And here's the thing, Mr. Thornton. On a ship in the middle of the ocean, even with a medical facility, if someone goes into insulin shock in their sleep, isolated in their cabin, by the time anyone finds them, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. My hands were shaking now. I clasped them together to stop the trembling. Why would Marcus want to hurt me? Dr. Chen hesitated. I don't know. But this afternoon I was in the coffee lounge on deck 7, sitting in one of those high-backed chairs near the window. Your daughter and Marcus came in. They sat in the booth right behind me. They didn't see me. And Mr. Thornton, I heard them talking. She pulled out her phone again, this time opening a voice recording app. I started recording. I know it might not be admissible in court, but I needed evidence. Listen. She pressed play. There was ambient noise, the clink of cups, general conversation, and then Sarah's voice, clearer than the rest. So we're sure about tonight? Marcus's voice, lower, careful. The dosage will be in his insulin pen. He takes it religiously at 9 p.m., remember? He'll inject it himself, go to sleep, and by morning, it'll look like a tragic accident. Diabetic complications. It happens to elderly people on cruises all the time. Sarah's voice again, and hearing it made my chest physically hurt. What if someone suspects something? They won't. I've researched this extensively. Insulin overdoses mimic natural diabetic emergencies. The ship's doctor will note it as an unfortunate complication of his condition. We're in international waters. There won't be a full investigation. They'll want to handle it quietly, respectfully. We'll be the grieving daughter and son-in-law. We'll take his body back to Vancouver, have a beautiful funeral, and then the insurance pays out, Sarah finished. $2 million, plus the house, the investments, everything. Marcus, are you absolutely sure this will work? Baby, I've been planning this for months. Switching his insulin for a concentrated dose is easy. He keeps his pens in that little cooler bag. I'll do it before dinner. He'll never know the difference. By tomorrow morning, we'll be free. Free of worrying about money. Free of that mortgage hanging over us. Free of having to pretend we enjoy spending time with your boring father. The recording continued for a few more minutes, but I couldn't hear it anymore over the roaring in my ears. My daughter, my Sarah, the little girl who used to fall asleep in my lap while I read her stories. The teenager who'd cried on my shoulder when her first boyfriend broke her heart. The woman who'd held my hand at Catherine's funeral and whispered, "We're going to be okay, Dad. We have each other." She wanted me dead. Dr. Chen stopped the recording. The silence in the cabin was deafening. "I'm so sorry," she said quietly. "I know this must be devastating, but you needed to know. You need to protect yourself." I tried to speak, but my throat was too tight. I swallowed hard, forced the words out. What should I do? First, don't take any insulin that you haven't personally verified. I'll provide you with fresh supplies from the medical bay. Use only those. Second, we need to preserve evidence. I'll keep this recording secure. Third, we need to involve the ship's captain in security. But Mr. Thornton, I have to tell you, it's going to be difficult. What I did, recording that conversation without consent, might not be legal depending on jurisdiction. And they're your family. The accusation alone will destroy your relationship with your daughter. She's already destroyed our relationship, I said bitterly. She just hadn't told me yet. The next few hours were the longest of my life. Dr. Chen contacted Captain Morrison, a stern Norwegian man in his 50s, who listened to our story with increasing gravity. He called his head of security, a former Toronto police officer named David Kowalski. We all gathered in the captain's quarters, door locked, voices low. "This is serious," Captain Morrison said, his accent thick. "Attempted murder, fraud, theft of medical supplies. But Dr. Chen is right. The evidence is problematic. The recording may not be admissible. The security footage shows theft, yes, but not intent to harm. A good lawyer could argue Marcus was confused, made a mistake. We need more." "What if we set up a sting?" Kowalski suggested. He was a big man with gray hair and sharp eyes. "Mr. Thornton, do you have access to your daughter's or son-in-law's devices? Their laptop, maybe?" I thought about it. Sarah always leaves her laptop in their cabin when we go to dinner. She says she doesn't trust the room safe. They lock the door, but I have a key. Marcus insisted I have one, said it was for emergencies. The irony wasn't lost on me. "And they're planning to do this tonight?" Kowalski asked. "According to the recording, yes. They're going to tamper with my insulin before dinner." He nodded slowly. "Okay, here's what we do. We need to catch them in the act. Mr. Thornton, you'll go through your evening normally. Doctor, Chen will swap your insulin for saline solution, clearly marked, so if they tamper with it, you won't actually be in danger. Meanwhile, I'll install a small camera in your cabin, focused on where you keep your medical supplies. We'll record them tampering with the insulin. That, combined with the recording and the theft footage, will be enough to hold them until we dock in Juneau and can turn them over to authorities." My stomach churned. I have to act normal? Sit through dinner with them, knowing what they're planning? Dr. Chen put a hand on my shoulder. "Can you do it?" I thought about Catherine, about the life we'd built together, about the daughter we'd raised, who I thought I knew. "Yes," I said. "I can do it." They set everything up, while Sarah and Marcus were at the afternoon wine tasting on Deck 9. Kowalski installed a tiny camera disguised as a smoke detector in my cabin, angled perfectly at the small refrigerated bag where I kept my insulin. Dr. Chen switched out all my insulin with saline, keeping the original vials as evidence. Then we all separated, agreeing to meet back after we had footage. At 6:30 p.m., I met Sarah and Marcus in the main dining room, wearing my best shirt and a smile that felt like it might crack my face. Sarah looked beautiful in a blue dress, her hair styled elegantly. Marcus wore a suit, his arm around her waist proprietarily. They looked like any other happy couple celebrating with an elderly parent. "Dad!" Sarah kissed my cheek, and I had to fight not to flinch. "You look nice. Feeling okay? You seemed a bit tired earlier." "Just needed a rest," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "You know how it is at my age." Marcus pulled out my chair, ever the gentleman. We ordered champagne, a toast to family. I sat down, accepted the glass, raised it when they did. "To family," I echoed, the words tasting like ash. Dinner was surf and turf, beautifully presented, probably delicious. I barely tasted it. I watched Sarah laugh at Marcus's jokes, watched them hold hands across the table, watched Marcus excuse himself halfway through the meal, saying he needed to use the restroom. He was gone for exactly 12 minutes. I know because I timed it, my watch ticking off each second like a countdown to betrayal. When he came back, he seemed more relaxed, almost jubilant. He ordered another bottle of champagne. Sarah's eyes were bright, excited. They thought they'd done it. They thought by tomorrow morning I'd be dead, and they'd be rich. After dinner, Marcus suggested we go to the deck to watch the sunset. We stood at the railing, the three of us, watching the sky turn orange and pink over the dark water. "Isn't this perfect, Dad?" Sarah said, leaning against me. "I'm so glad we did this trip." "Me too," I managed to say, and part of me meant it in a twisted way. If we hadn't taken this trip, I might never have known. I might have died in my sleep 6 months from now, a year from now, and never understood that my daughter had killed me for money. At 8:45 p.m., I excused myself, saying I was tired. Sarah hugged me tightly. "Sleep well, Dad. See you at breakfast." "Sweet dreams," Marcus added, his smile wide and empty. I went to my cabin, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The camera was invisible unless you knew where to look. I went through my normal routine, changing into my pajamas, brushing my teeth. At exactly 9 p.m., I took out my insulin pen, the one that now contained only saline, and gave myself my injection. Then I got into bed, turned off the lights, and waited. I didn't sleep. I lay there in the darkness, listening to the hum of the ship's engines, the distant sound of music from one of the lounges. I thought about Sarah as a baby, how she'd wrap her tiny hand around my finger. I thought about teaching her to ride a bike, about her graduation, about walking her down the aisle 3 years ago when she married Marcus. Had she already been thinking about killing me then? Or had Marcus planted the idea later, when their real estate investments went bad, when the credit card debt piled up? My phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m. A text from Kowalski. Got it. Clear footage. Meet in captain's quarters at 6 a.m. I closed my eyes then, finally, and slept fitfully until dawn. At 6 a.m. I slipped out of my cabin and made my way to the captain's quarters. Everyone was already there. Captain Morrison, Kowalski, Dr. Chen, and 2 uniformed security officers I hadn't met before. Kowalski had his laptop open, cued to the footage. You should see this, he said quietly. I watched the screen. The timestamp read 7:58 p.m. during dinner. The cabin door opened, and Marcus entered, looking around quickly before going straight to my medical bag. He pulled out my insulin pen, examined it, then reached into his pocket and withdrew another pen, identical in appearance. He made the switch quickly, efficiently, then left. The whole thing took 90 seconds. We've tested the insulin he left, Dr. Chen said. It's Humalog, but at 5 times the normal concentration. If you'd injected that, Mr. Thornton, you would have been in a coma within an hour, dead by morning. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the desk. What happens now? Captain Morrison's face was grave. We dock in Juneau in 4 hours. I've contacted the Alaska State Troopers and the FBI. Attempted murder crosses state and international lines. They'll be waiting. We'll arrest Marcus and your daughter immediately upon docking. Can I swallowed hard. Can I talk to her first? To Sarah? Kowalski frowned. Not advisable, Mr. Thornton. Please. I need to know why. I need to hear it from her. They exchanged glances. Finally, Captain Morrison nodded. We'll bring them here, together, with security present. But Mr. Thornton, prepare yourself. This won't be easy. 20 minutes later, Sarah and Marcus were escorted to the captain's quarters, both looking confused and slightly annoyed at being woken so early. Sarah was in yoga pants and a sweatshirt, her hair in a messy bun. Marcus wore jeans and a t-shirt. They looked so normal, so innocent. Dad? What's going on? Sarah asked, seeing me. Captain Morrison said there was an emergency. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. Tried to find the little girl I'd raised somewhere in this woman's face. Why Sarah? She blinked. Why? What? Why did you decide to kill me? The color drained from her face. Marcus's expression went carefully blank. Dad, what are you talking about? Have you been drinking? Don't, I said, my voice breaking. Don't lie to me anymore. I know everything. The stolen insulin, the plan. Dr. Chen heard you talking. The cameras caught Marcus tampering with my medication. It's over. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Sarah's face crumbled, and I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd break down, apologize, tell me it was all a terrible mistake. Instead, she laughed. It was a bitter, angry sound that I'd never heard from her before. You want to know why? Her voice was sharp now, all pretense gone. Because you were supposed to help us, Dad. When Mom died, she left you everything. That house in North Van is worth $2 million. You have her life insurance, your pension, your investments. You're sitting on at least $3 million while Marcus and I are drowning in debt. I helped you with your down payment, I said, stunned. I gave you $50,000. $50,000? She laughed again harshly. That's nothing. We need real money. Our mortgage is killing us. Marcus's investments failed. We're on the verge of bankruptcy. But you just sit in that big house all alone, hoarding your wealth while your own daughter suffers. I didn't know you were struggling. You never said anything. You told me business was great. Because we have pride, Dad. We're not going to beg you for money like children. But then Marcus pointed out that we wouldn't have to beg if you were gone. The house, the investments, the insurance, it all comes to me. We could start over, live the life we deserve. Marcus stepped forward, his face cold and calculating now that the mask had dropped. "You're old, Robert. Diabetic. You could go at any time naturally. We just hurried the process along. Frankly, you should thank us for planning to make it painless." The security officers moved then, handcuffing them both. Sarah fought, screaming, crying, "Dad, please, don't do this. We're family. You can't send me to prison. Dad!" I turned away, unable to watch anymore. "I don't have a daughter," I said quietly. "My daughter died a long time ago. I just didn't know it until now." They were taken away, their shouts fading down the corridor. Captain Morrison put a hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry you had to endure this." "What happens next?" "We'll dock in Juneau. They'll be arrested, charged with attempted murder, theft, fraud, conspiracy. The evidence is solid. Dr. Chen's testimony, the security footage, the recording, the tampered insulin. They'll go to trial." And they did. 6 months later, I sat in a courtroom in Vancouver, where the case had been transferred, since that's where the conspiracy originated, where the planning had taken place. I listened to prosecutors detail how Sarah and Marcus had been planning my murder for over a year, how they'd researched insulin overdoses, practiced switching medication, forged documents to make themselves beneficiaries on insurance policies I didn't even know existed. The defense tried to argue that they'd never gone through with it, that no actual harm had occurred. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Marcus was sentenced to 12 years. Sarah, as the primary beneficiary and instigator, got 15. I watched them being led away in handcuffs, Sarah crying, Marcus stony-faced. She looked at me one last time, and I looked back, feeling absolutely nothing. After the trial, I sold the house in North Vancouver. Too many memories, both good and bad. I moved to a smaller condo in Kitsilano, close to the water. I volunteer now, 3 days a week, at the Vancouver Elder Abuse Prevention Center. I tell my story to other seniors, teach them the warning signs, help them protect themselves from family members who see them as ATMs rather than human beings. I've learned to check my bank accounts weekly. I keep my legal documents in a lawyer's office, not at home. I've written a will that leaves everything to charity, specifically to organizations that help seniors and prevent elder abuse. And I've learned to trust my instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Dr. Patricia Chen and I still email occasionally. She left cruise work and now runs a clinic in Victoria. She saved my life by trusting her gut, by being willing to risk her career to warn a stranger. I'll never be able to repay her for that. People sometimes ask me if I miss Sarah, if I ever think about forgiving her. The truth is, I miss the daughter I thought I had. I miss the little girl who loved me. But that person either never existed, or she died somewhere along the way, replaced by a stranger who valued money over human life. You can't forgive someone who isn't sorry, who would still have killed you given the chance. I'm 63 now. I take my insulin religiously, from clearly marked vials that I keep locked in a safe. I live simply, carefully, guarding my health and my resources. And every time I speak to a senior who's worried about their family's sudden interest in their finances, every time I help someone recognize the signs of financial elder abuse, I feel like something good came from all that pain. Catherine used to say that everything happens for a reason. I'm not sure I believe that anymore. But I do believe that we choose what we do with our pain. We can let it destroy us, or we can use it to protect others. I chose the latter. And every person I help, every life I potentially save, feels like a small victory over the daughter who tried to kill me for my money. That's all any of us can do, really. Survive, heal, and try to make sure our scars serve some purpose beyond just reminding us that we bled.